Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of VI Shots Live. And today we're on VI Shots Live. We have several special guests, including Jack Dunaway. Jack, welcome to the show again.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's always fun to do these shows with you.
Jack, of course, is from Wirebird Labs, and he's my co-host and cohort in these episodes. These episodes come out once a month so far. We've had, Jack, was it been 3 or 4 that we've had?
This is number 6, so yeah, we're halfway through the year already, and I prefer co-conspirator over co-host. How's that?
Awesome. And basically on VI Shots Live, we interview several people from the LabVIEW community, sometimes from National Instruments, sometimes from other Alliance member companies, or basically anything that interests us in the world of LabVIEW. If you want to find out when the next VI Shots Live is, please subscribe to the VI Shots mailing list. It's available at vishots.com/subscribe. And typically what happens is we send out an email about a week or so before the event occurs. Currently, this, of course, is live, and we're taking questions from the audience and the people that are online. If you go to the Google Hangouts page, and you can find that by going to vishots.com/live, and there you can watch the video, and you can also click on a link which will take you to Google Plus, where you can ask live questions. So we'll try to take those questions on the air, so please ask any that you may have. It could be related to the topic, or it could be off topic. If you want to ask our presenters any personal questions, we'll try to fit those in. So speaking of guests, we have, first and foremost, Mr. Stephen Mercer, and he's a senior software engineer with National Instruments. He's worked at National Instruments for over 10 years. Of course, he works in the LabVIEW development team, working on new features, and he's probably famous in the community for LabVIEW object-oriented development, and he led the team that implemented the LabVIEW object-oriented framework in LabVIEW. And of course, he's the topic of the show is how we've brought in the GDS Toolkit into LabVIEW and how he's helped do that, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael.
And for those of you who have never heard of this person in your life, maybe better known as Aristos Q on all of the forums.
And we also have Mikael Holmstrom, who's coming to us all the way from Sydney, Australia. And it's early morning over there, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's correct, Mike.
And the weather's beautiful in Australia. Michael currently works for, he's a manufacturing software manager at Finisar, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And Michael has worked at other companies in the past. He's worked at Symbio and Devo, and he's one of the key developers of the GOOP Development Suite, and it's had many names in the past. And of course, Michael, you can walk us through some of those when you talk a little bit about it. Thank you all, gentlemen, for coming on the show. Michael, let's start with you and talk a little bit about. Well, actually, Stephen, maybe you can talk about the announcement about NI purchasing the GOOP Development Suite. Because even though it was announced on the forums and the community, a lot of people still aren't aware of this. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's been a toolkit that a lot of you have used called the GOOP Development Suite from Symbio that has been available for many years, and it's something that National Instruments has worked with the Symbio guys in order to get it. Make sure it works with LabVIEW. They've done all of the code production and all, but there's always been this long-standing wish in my heart that we could actually have it in-house, because there were a lot of cool things that you could do and a lot of enhancements that my team was never large enough to build, and Symbio had the manpower to do. And after both Mikael and I, leaning on our respective management chains, we managed to get them all to the point where National Instruments was able to purchase the full rights to the GOOP Development Suite. And then after a bit of leaning on my management chain a bit further, we got them to release it lock, stock, and barrel for free through the LabVIEW Tools Network. So it's available for download. It's got no passwords on the VIs. It's simply available to enhance your LabVIEW experience when you're working with LabVIEW classes.
And that's worth stopping and really really pointing out the significance of what has happened. So not only do we have this tool that is just fantastic, not only just the engineering and the product management behind that, but now what we have additionally, now that it's under NI, like you said, Stephen, it's available for everyone, and it's even open source. And that is just the magnitude of that. I'm very excited to talk to you guys on this show about this today. Just hearing even more about this. But for those of you listening in the audience who think, oh yeah, this is cool. No, this is a really pivotal moment that is very important for our entire community, just at large, not just this as a win.
I do want to give props where props are due. Elijah Carey, whom a lot of you know as a major proponent of large application development and travels around the world selling LabVIEW and helping people design large architectures, was a major force in working to get the NI to agree to this open source experiment. And I should clarify, the term I've been told to use is community source, not open source, Jack.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure to call it that, CS. So yeah, actually, Mikael, if you would tell us just about your journey. So when did you start on what would become this thing that we now call NI-GDS? When did that start to form into a product out of the ether and out of your own engineering experiences?
Yeah. Okay. It started in '98 when I attended a GOOP course, one of the first GOOP courses that ND was holding in Sweden, and that's when I got introduced to GOOP. It's called GOOP 1 then, the first reference-based GOOP architecture. But it took 3 years before I actually joined NDivo and started, and then we started work on a GOOP wizard. You needed a wizard to create these classes, and that's when we also introduced GOOP 2 with inheritance. And then so then I just actually did a UML modeler and the icon editor part of that GOOP inheritance toolkit. But then when 8.2 was about to release, we got permission to try out the new project provider features you can add into LabVIEW in 8.2. And that's when we can actually integrate all these wizard features inside right-click functions on the project tray. And that's when I started full-time just doing all the GOOP stuff. And then we added also GOOP 3, that's a new kernel when we actually use NI, so 8.2's inheritance. And yeah, since then, 2006, after that I've been working hard on new features and updates of this and integrate the UML modeler and everything into this framework.
And so for those of us who don't know the difference between GOOP and LVOOP, would either one of you guys like to educate us the differences and why we would use one versus the other?
Do you mind if I take this one, Mikael?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure, go ahead.
So LabVIEW classes are native classes built into LabVIEW. They're part of the G language. And GOOP is the reference architecture and template support system that enhances its two parts. It's the IDE enhancements, and it's also a set of template classes that allow you to build certain things, most notably the by reference architectures. So the two, a lot of people are like, oh, you have to choose between them, but we kind of made them to work together as to do whatever pieces of your architecture it is that whichever tool is called for.
Great way to put it. Over the years, I've heard people ask the questions, which should I use, LVOOP or GOOP? And the answer is it's not necessarily an either or, because it's very likely that both can map into your problem domain, into your application domain.
I like to point out that the bulk of the GOOP development suite is itself built out of LabVIEW classes, so it's they can't be that far apart.
So truly, for many, many years, there's been a relationship back and forth between these two, not just the language and the syntax and the IDE, but also the people. I mean, the people behind this have been talking for a long, long time.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the kind of the nitty-gritty functionality of what the GOOP Development Suite adds to the existing LabVIEW LVOOP development experience. Like for example, you mentioned the project environment. So what enhancements in the project environment, in the tree, for example, do you have that could possibly help someone who's already using LVOOP do maybe things more efficiently or better, or what does it add to? Why would I want to use it?
Mikael, you want to start rattling them off?
Yeah, I can take. Yeah, so the first feeling when I used 8.2 and I need to create a class, by value class, you right-click and select new class, and it opens up basically an empty VI or empty class, and you have to save it, of course, first. So you need to, of course, name it. First create it, save it, name it. You need to create the icon. You need to create the wire. And after you've done that, then you can start actually adding VIs or methods into the class. And all these 4 steps, I thought would be nice to be able to just have a dialog and you fill in everything at once, and then press create, and it will do that for you. That's what we added into the GOOP Development Suite. Just an easier way of streamline the process of creating classes, and also the same with methods and VIs that you'll want to link to the class as well.
There's also the capability, I kind of like this feature of doing like a cloning of a class. Can you talk a little bit about that? You just have a right-click feature on a class and it clones it, and also tries to, if you have, it clones all the VIs, of course, links to it, and try to relink the whole new class with all the within all the new methods. I'm not sure how the native cloning or save as feature does it. I think it does similar. I don't know. It probably doesn't update the icon as well. We do that, but I haven't tried the native ones for many years because
he has better tools. And I'll be very blunt and upfront about it. There's a reason I wanted this toolkit to be available for LabVIEW. The development team that I had to work on classes was fairly limited, and we said, look, we can build a whole bunch of language stuff, and then we turned to Mikael and said, your team has already been building this very nice front end. If you keep going with it, we'll point people your way. And I always had this plan of pulling those features back into LabVIEW just as soon as I got done with the car backlog and with the feature requests.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, some other cool little features of the add-on is you can create custom glyphs for the classes. Instead of using the standard cube, which is in the tree, you can create like circles, like a frame icon and all these weird icons, which visually separates the different classes in the hierarchy and gives additional enhancements to the whole thing. I think that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that has a lot of value, especially when you're looking at your project window and you have a few dozen classes, maybe even more than a few dozen, rather than just seeing the little blue cube on ones. You can see them divided out into like ones that I like are the wireframe view of it, and then also having the different colors on it. It allows you to, at a glance, see how your application is architected at a class level, not even necessarily just at the once you dive into lower levels. So it gives you a really good overview of it. That's a very helpful feature I like also.
Mikael goes far beyond just creating new classes and little bits of icon that can be customized. He gives you the ability to create entire new design patterns and instantiate. Here are the basic building block pieces. Now, a design pattern is something you have to build every time because it's a pattern, not something that's built into the library. But it gives you templates to walk through and fill in. Click which options you would like today, and makes a lot of that sort of process very easy compared to building it by hand, and it's all nicely pluggable if you've got your own designs that you would like to put in there with it.
So, can you elaborate a little bit on this? So, because I think I saw something in there related to actor framework.
Yes, indeed.
Is that something along those lines?
So one of the things that, because Mikael and I actually knew each other, and we kind of had permission from our various managements to interact, every once in a while I would go to him and say, we're adding this new feature, is there some way you can work it in? And one of those was, it's a kind of a pain to get a new actor class up and running, because you have to create a new project and then you have to remember to go add the actor classes into your project, and then you can create the class that inherits. And he just makes that easy. Right click and say add the current actor framework, and now right click add a new actor, and it goes ahead and builds it, instantiates a few key parts of it, gives you some blank space where you can put in your core functionality. So that's just one example of one of those design patterns. It's a little bit faster to spin up.
Before we continue, I just want to remind everyone who's listening and watching online that they can contribute to the conversation, ask questions. They can go to vishots.com/live and click on the Google Plus link, and they can freely ask questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can here. Can you, Stephen, talk a little bit about this idea of community collaboration? I know you've done this a little bit in the past with the actor framework. I guess that was kind of a test case for this, but this goes to the next level, I think, right?
That's our goal. So as I said, we've made it available to the community through the LabVIEW Tools Network. And so if you've downloaded it, you now have the source code, and so you yourself could make modifications. But of course, that's only the first part of making a piece of software that's truly a community project. With the actor framework, we've used the ni.com forums, updating new versions and all of this, but we've kind of run afoul of a lot of the open source licenses create problems for me putting it back in a for-profit LabVIEW if we want to distribute it with it, and stuff like that. So after a lot of conversation with management all the way up and down the chain, we're going to be spinning up a GitHub server, and I really wanted to say where it was today and get everything actually moving, but it's still being finalized. We have the basic setup, but it's not ready for customers to sign into yet. But we're going to be putting the code up onto the GitHub server, making it available for you to download, modify, and push the changes up. It's not an open server. As I said, we're using the term community source, not open source. You have to sign a license agreement with National Instruments to get access to this repository. The license agreement is very similar to a BSD license, but it has a few modifications to it. First, it's got a little bit of virality to it, that what you pull down, you agree to relicense under that same license. It requires that the changes you make and distribute must be available on the GitHub repository. It includes an indemnity for National Instruments in the event that you upload code that is deliberate malware or you don't actually have the IP rights to update. That's a big change from a lot of software which basically disclaims and says the end user is responsible for making sure of the provenance of this software, but we didn't feel we could do that for LabVIEW itself if we're going to be distributing it in something that core. And then it allows, if we desire, it allows NI to take ownership of the changes in order to incorporate them into future product releases. It doesn't change your rights when we do that, but it allows us to have more flexibility in how we package things. And really, the goal was to make it so that we could have these things that are basically fully available to anyone who owns a copy of LabVIEW, which is about as open source as you get with LabVIEW. Make them available. Make it possible for you all to share your modifications independently, and still keep us in good standing if we were to bring it back into the for-pay software. Basically, having a slice of things that are open source as part of a DVD distro that is for profit was one of those things that made our legal team kind of scratch their head and have to work out some details. It's not, the open source dream that a lot of people have wished, but it is a good, I think, starting point. And if it's a successful experiment and we get more comfortable working with the community, It's the sort of thing I think we will see LabVIEW with National Instruments become a lot more comfortable with that sort of project. This is a pretty big step for a lot of NI to get even this close to community development, as I'm sure some of the JKI guys can tell you, and the OpenG community.
Yeah, Stephen, again, I commend you and Eli also for being able to get this. And like you mentioned, it's a big ship that's headed in one way right now, and you guys have changed its course just a tiny bit. And it's not open source at this point. We'll call it community source.
So there will be.
Yeah, go ahead.
There will be 3 libraries in the first version that we're going to put up initially. The GOOP Development Suite, complete with all of the templates and the installer and the build system that Mikael has got, the actor framework, and the character lineator. And what that gives us is one toolkit that is a separate standalone toolkit, one toolkit that's a part of LabVIEW core, and one that is a independent piece at the moment that we would like to make part of LabVIEW, and that kind of gives us all the flavors so we can play out with this experiment and see how different ones take different development paths.
So just to clarify, you're saying that all these 3 tools will be in one, and they'll all be under the GitHub server location?
They'll all be up on the GitHub. They'll be in separate repositories on the GitHub, but they will all be up there.
And because we have one of the questions that says, will GDS be bundled with a LabVIEW version in the future? How is that? What do you have to say about that?
We've talked about that. I would certainly like to get it to that point. There are some issues with doing that directly. Easy examples are that some of the dialogues and whatnot don't match National Instruments style, and things like that. And there's a lot of people who would like to integrate it piecemeal into LabVIEW rather than whole hog. So I think you'll see movement in that direction, but it's going to be very slow, and it won't. I'll just tell you right now, it won't be in the 2015 timeframe. We just brought the software in just recently from Symbio. We've now got it updated to this point, and it'll sit in the community and gestate for a little bit.
And this is probably also a good time to plug. If you want to see new versions of LabVIEW that are coming out, go to ni.com beta, and you're able to participate in the latest beta program, be able to apply to be in that beta program, and see, for instance, LabVIEW 2014 before it comes out. So those of you who are interested in seeing this come out earlier than later, perhaps you might want to join the beta and put some inertia into saying, yeah, we'd like to push this forward. Just put more support into it. So that's actually a good lead-in to the current question that we'd like to answer from Steve Watts. He asked, he says, kudos, Mikael. It's a hell of a piece of work. So apparently he likes it, uses it. In your opinion, what did you have to leave on the things to do to list? What did you have to leave on your to-do list, essentially, and what would you like to see the community do with GDS? So, of the things that are on your to-do list, where would you like to see us take it and move forward?
So yeah, I haven't done a lot of new development, new features lately because I have made. There's some limitations that I'm about to fix. It's like we don't support packed library, for instance, and stuff like that. There might be a new thing that the reference-based architecture we're using, and now the latest one has DVRs. It's quite basic, and maybe there's a chance if people still want to go with reference-based object, maybe there's a complete new set of class template, or we call it provider, someone would like to make. Because I know that JKI has their own OO templates, and different people has their own flavor. There was an OpenG version as well a long time ago that we also supported, but maybe someone else would like to make a more rich flavored OO class architecture that we can incorporate. That would be a fun thing to see.
What does it take technically to create a new template like that? Like, what amount of work would you be putting into this template beyond just the engineering of the template itself, of course, and battle testing it, things like that? How much, I guess you'd say, packaging does it take to make a GDS template?
It's not that difficult. Actually, the framework is, of course, it's a class itself, using by value classes, and basically we instantiate which class flavor you have. So every class file, this .lv class file, has a name which provider it's actually made of. So the GOOP Development Suite will actually say, if I want to add a method, it will check this class name, and it will create the class of that type. So basically, and then it will call the base class functions like create method or create new class or so. And basically, you just need to create, it's called a class writer class template for your class template. So let's say someone want to make something called JKI Goop. Then they create a writer class for that. It has all the methods to create methods, create classes, clone classes and stuff. And they also create a reader class. The reader class is used for the UML modeler to be able to analyze that class. If they only create a creator class, yeah, we can create classes. But if you create a reader class, it'll also be able to read back information. And yeah, depending on read methods, read attributes, and all that. So basically, just creating these two classes, a reader and a writer class for your template, then you're good.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just as you were saying, my mind was wandering into how powerful that is, essentially. Like whenever we create classes today and distribute these classes, things that we think about are, well, let's make a good icon, or let's make a good probe, or maybe make a good palette for that class. I was just thinking in the future, maybe 2-3 years from now, it's not a good class unless it has its own dependency that's injected into the GDS framework that knows how to do all these different instantiations. For instance, if you want to create a new method of this type. So being able to tag a class that would instruct the framework on how to do these meta level operations in the IDE, that's just incredible. And it'd be cool to see that as part of kind of this next generation of class development, really, that we would have available with the GDS toolkit.
Yeah, definitely. Being able to plug into the framework this way is pretty awesome. Just answering another question from Fabiola de la Cueva. Bravo for the community source. Who will be monitoring / managing what gets kept from community contributions?
So that's the question that's coming my way. So when changes are put up, it's going to be a volunteer effort from a few of us inside National Instruments. So myself, a couple of others. It's outside of our normal job. So it will be, as I have time, very similar for those of you who've interacted with me on the forums for the active framework changes and that sort of thing. That's true for all of us that are volunteering our time on this. So just as an example, you'll see Alan Smith in the active framework branch. There will be various NI employees who have the ability to pick change lists and integrate them back into the main source branch that we'll maintain. It will be as we have time, and I'm being very blunt about that. As I said, this is a bit of an experiment and a bit of a, some of us really pushing for this on the side, and that's making it able to happen.
I have another follow-on logistics question, and that is this special Git server. Or GitHub server, actually. So GitHub has things like issues and feature requests, things like that you can tag along with your commits in your source code. Is that going to be publicly accessible to anyone who wants to view and read-only access, or is it only available for viewing to people who have signed the agreement?
Only for people who have signed the agreement.
Okay.
And yeah, we can get into that at some point later when we're publishing out the actual agreement and all.
Sure, that's okay. And you guys are still talking about it. You're still negotiating, so that's a longer term time scale.
It's actually it's all worked out. It's just actually
Okay.
got to get implemented.
Oh, very
So,
nice. Very cool.
yeah, we're. I think we're on pretty good footing, and we are making sure that the agreement allows you, if you do work on it, as long as you put the changes on the server, you still have some amount of distribution rights on your own as object binaries. So.
Gotcha. So you did mention it is on GitHub. A lot of us LabVIEW users, not everyone uses Git. What does that mean for most of us who are coming from, say, Subversion?
It means the most arcane source code control system anybody has seen since CVS. Or sorry, ClearCase. Open source advocates love Git because of the way it handles community development, and it gets rid of anything that is remotely resembling centralized anything. But the end result is it can be very easy to become confused about which branch it is that you're currently talking to, what you're actually pushing, and when you ask, is there a good user interface for this, they all look at you and go, it's a command line, that's easy to use. And I'm not kidding, there are quotes about that on the forums. They don't believe in graphical. Graphical is not the programming language that they do.
That's true, but actually one thing that I'll add to that is about a couple of years ago, Atlassian, who usually does more HG stuff, but they've started to do a lot of Git stuff over the years also. They've developed a product called SourceTree, which was only available on Mac for a long time, for 2 or 3 or 4 years now. But within this past year, they released a client on Windows, and it works very, very nicely. So if you're familiar with Subversion, a lot of people would raise their hand and say Tortoise SVN, that's the good client on Windows that you want to use. So you might naively just say, well, Tortoise Git is probably going to be my best thing for Git. You can try both SourceTree and tGit, Tortoise Git, but I personally have found a lot more success with SourceTree. And one thing that I really like about it is you can actually configure it to get rid of a lot of these arcane mystic incantations that Stephen was talking about to try to get Git to work. You can actually make it work more like SourceTree, such as when you commit, it will automatically push to the server. When you pull, it'll automatically update your repository, things like that. So you can actually configure your client such that it works very nicely, and you'll have a pretty good transition, I think, from Subversion into Git. So that's pretty exciting that it's using Git.
Yeah. And GitHub, just to be clear, Git is a protocol and a source code control system. GitHub is a particular website that hosts one of those Git instances and makes it provides a server for people to put projects up on, and they're the ones we've chosen to work with.
Right, and they allow you to host their own software on your private servers.
Correct.
Yeah.
That as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'd like to just bring it back to the Goop Development Suite itself a little bit. We have a lot of people in the community, even though we'd love to say that, everyone's programming with object-oriented programming and everyone's using LVOOP. Not everyone is, and a lot of people are just using traditional, data flow and, well, sorry, LVOOP is data flow, can be, but not objects. So there are some tools in the Goop Development Suite that perhaps could be an entry point for some people doing object-oriented. For example, the UML modeler, which I'm not sure I understand all of its capabilities. Mikael, could you describe a little bit about what that tool can do potentially for someone getting into LVOOP? Because I know there's a feature called reverse engineering and other things that you can do going from UML to actual code. Can you talk a little bit about that tool?
Yes, sure. So actually, I started this tool just as a hobby, 2001, just to be able to view. Actually, I started because we created the Goop inheritance class template, and to create a graphical user interface or graphical application like a Paint or any kind of UML model as well, you need basically use inheritance. You have a base class of all representation of your graphic types of you want to draw on a diagram. So I created it just because we added inheritance, and just to try, will actually our Goop class template actually support inheritance? And it was such a fun thing. So yeah, it actually did work. So I thought, oh, let's see if we can analyze the classes I have in my in the code. So we didn't have a project then. So basically I just said search in this folder and try to find all classes. And of course it recognized our type of classes, how we created classes. So but now when
what you're saying is you actually shipped your test plan?
Yeah, correct. First we just had it as an internal tool and just for fun thing, and then we actually start shipping it. We didn't sell it until I think we tried to sell it before, but when we actually integrated it in the Goop Development Suite, that's when we shipped it to a customer and people can get hands of it. And what it does, the first thing was just to be able to analyze your project tree and try to find all classes and draw them in a class diagram. And that's UML is a language, a graphical language to display classes and relationship between classes. And since LabVIEW is graphical, there should be a graphical user representation of your code as well. You have there, of course, the VI hierarchy tree, and then you also got the class browser now. That's a little bit like that, but the UML model also finds relationships between classes. So if one class is using a method of another class, that means it has a dependency to that class. So if you want to reuse that class, you also have to have the classes that it's dependent on in the next project. So you have to lift those out. And I normally do analysis of my project from time to time just to see if I have any illegal dependencies. And I often have that. I've probably borrowed a type def from one class to another, and I shouldn't have done that, but that's my most common mistakes. I have type defs that I didn't create my own of. I just used another class type def, and suddenly I have a dependency, hard dependency between two classes that then now I can't really reuse this class in a different project if I don't break that dependency. So that's what we call reverse engineering. It goes through your project and try to display it in this UML notation. And then we also added forwards. Actually, you can modify your classes or create new classes in the UML and actually creates classes in your project as well.
So one important thing to note, UML is a standard language for all programming languages, and there's a reason it's got such popularity for modeling software modules. What's notable about the GDS is that Mikael over the years has added in features that are very specific to LabVIEW for modeling. So it can, it can include the friendship scope, which doesn't have a standard notation because we did friendship a bit different than some other languages. It can model the difference between a by value versus a by reference dependency, that sort of thing, and reflect those differently in your graph.
Oh, I think we lost Stephen's audio.
Yeah, he may have frozen just a second. So while we're getting Stephen back.
Stephen is back.
Okay. Can you hear me at this point?
Yes.
Okay. What I was saying was that the GDS gives us several LabVIEW-centric UML features. UML is a standard language, but Mikael has created a number of extension points to be able to cover LabVIEW-specific features. Like he can differentiate a data flow by value connection from a by reference connection, and it's aware of friendship scope, which is not one of the standard scopes that UML defines. That sort of thing.
Yeah, Mikael, you brought up an interesting topic, and that is every now and then to just evaluate the relationships in your application design to make sure that you don't have these anomalous linkages. I've noticed that also it's not just for good design. It will a lot of times actually bring down the performance of your application just in terms of design time performance. And so being able to have a tool like this that helps us characterize those things that you don't necessarily expect, these anomalous linkages, that definitely helps. Actually, Stephen, this is lobbing a question at you. I have no idea if you have an answer or not, but can you talk about why anomalous linkages like that slow down performance, essentially? When we have codependencies, circular dependencies? Oh, and I think you may be muted right now.
It's mostly just LabVIEW checking that that the dependencies are valid dependencies. Once as long as things are a tree, it's very easy to check. Once things are a circular graph, things are a lot more complicated.
And the
Gotcha.
development environment gets really slow.
Sometimes.
Yeah, well.
Right, yeah, I can just say that anecdotally, and that's why it's exciting to have a tool like this, because it keeps your dev environment from getting slow, and just in a, I guess like in a spiritual sense, you feel better about your design because it's not, it doesn't have linkages that you didn't expect. So let's take just a moment and say some comments from the section over here. Chris Relf, of course, in his way of always pulling out double entendres, he says, "Can everyone see Mikael's brilliance?" I think he's referring to his mind and also the fact that it's now morning over in Australia. Also, Fabiola has another vote for source tree is great. She also points out that it's a good UI for both Git and Mercurial, which I actually appreciate as well because I've got repositories in both Git and Mercurial. And so Fab asks another question up here at the top. In your experience, what is the limit on number of classes that the UML modeler can reverse engineer?
Okay, there is of course no limit, but LabVIEW gets a bit sluggish when it needs, especially it's a picture control as you see in the UML. I just draw everything in picture control, and draw a rectangle is quite quick in LabVIEW in the picture control. But if you want to draw text, like the methods and the class name, to draw text is very slow in LabVIEW. And especially if you want to have different fonts. If you have the standard font size, it's quick. But if you try to change the font, so if you're zooming in and out, LabVIEW becomes very sluggish. I tried to solve it by running things in parallel. So I draw text or classes and association in parallel. That worked fine if I run the VI as the UML model as a normal standalone VI. But when I tried to do that and it was running in this project provider, it crashed LabVIEW. So it has a little bit of, when it runs as a project provider in that application instance, it has some limitations, and that also why you see a lot of crashes, unfortunately. And it's something we need to work with the NI to solve these things.
LabVIEW, of course, is perfect, as we all know, and it's all user error. This is why we're opening it up to the community so we can find some better users.
Oh, I love it.
That was funny. So we have a question from Neil Pate. Thank you, Neil, for watching. He's saying, I'm not sure if I understand this question. It seems we have two toolkits, GDS and G#. I think that's what he means. Doing essentially the same thing. Any plans on consolidating this situation, as it seems there is definitely a duplication of labor?
No, they kind of fork in their basic philosophy. The G# took the approach of using very standard UML and interacting directly with star UML tools, and the GDS took the approach of modifying UML to include LabVIEW specific elements. Then you've got differences in the design of some of the dialogues and some of the different styles of doing things. Having two toolkits that do the same thing is not necessarily a bad thing. That's what we refer to as competition in the market, and people do also have different preferences on how they style things. At least now you can make your choice on which one you use based on the features instead of based on the price point.
Yeah, so just for further clarification, it's not duplication of effort in the sense of two separate departments in one company have created the same thing without collaborating. It's that we have two separate products that have grown up in two separate ecospheres with separate requirements that have grown up together and in parallel.
And if someone wants to sit down and try to unify the two code bases, go for it.
And create a third product.
Just to answer a question from Justin Gorez, who's a co-worker of mine from JKI. When will GDS be available as a VI package? Well, I have some information on that because I
leading question.
Yes, leading question. I contributed some of my own time and resources to look into that because, the goal of Stephen was to get this out there as soon as possible and get the community's hands on it. So there wasn't enough time to do a package, and there was some technical issues as well. So right now there is a setup.vi that you double-click and it installs, but of course there's no uninstaller, which is kind of strange. But
there is an uninstaller.
There is? Where is that? I didn't see it.
It's in the menu.
Oh, okay. Oh, it just turns it off, basically, right?
Yeah, it's in the tools menu.
It switches it off, but doesn't really completely remove it. But why would you want to remove it, right?
It now completely removes it. The version that the National Instruments version, that was actually one of the modifications I did. Is it actually does remove the files.
Oh, cool. Okay.
At least it's supposed to. Maybe somebody will tell me I didn't get it right.
The text description says otherwise, so that's why I got a little bit. It just basically says the next time you relaunch LabVIEW, it won't show up. It doesn't say it actually uninstalls it. But anyway, that's aside. So we've actually released a new version of VIPM 2014, which has some features that makes it a lot easier for people to do these type of tools in LabVIEW, and I was able to successfully build the GDS Toolkit. So the GDS Toolkit forced me to add some features to VIPM to be able to build it. So it's kind of a circular thing there. But yeah, so 2014 is out, and pretty soon I'm collaborating with Mikael and Stephen to see if the package works. And then once it does, I'm sure we'll have it out there, and also the build spec where other people in the community can build their own versions of the package as well. Which is actually a good question. So how will that? How is that going to be managed if people have their own packages of their own versions and all that? Is that going to be handled at all on your end?
Did I mention this was an experiment? We are going to try a few different things. With the GOOP Development Suite, I'm pushing up all of the files needed to build Mikael's current installer, and if we get the VI Package Manager generation system from Mikael integrated back in, then we might have that so that people can build their own packages for distro. With the actor framework, that installs down into your VI Lib and needs to come down into a particular location. At the moment, I'm just putting up just the files for the actor framework itself because I've moving them back and forth from the VI Lib position to the non-VI Lib position has caused me some difficulty. With the character lineator, which is currently a completely separate thing that I build in, I'm pushing up the files that'll actually allow you to build the VIPM package. So we've got a little bit of different flavoring for each of the three, and we'll see which is a more successful strategy for managing that. As far as how we handle versioning and product identification so that people are aware of which file it is they're actually installing, we're going to have some recommendations for best practices on the READMEs when you pull down the source code, and we'll see how those work.
So, before we run out of time today, there's actually one question that I'm sure we'd all like to hear more about, and that's simply, so Mikael, you said you've been doing this since the late 90s, 1998, when this first kind of started to spawn, and just recently here, this year, 2014, the acquisition was announced. So can you guys both talk a little bit about just that process of acquisition, how that began, just give us a little bit of the storyline. Of course, omit any details that are necessary, but we have another question over here that a community member asked that we probably won't answer directly. But yeah, we're interested to hear the story behind how things started, how things progressed, got to where they are, and then finally, what's your role moving forward, Mikael? Because even though I have bought this, you're still very active in it as a product manager and a software developer.
Wait, you mean Michael's not living on a beach somewhere in some island, some private island? What do you mean?
Australia's an island, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So yeah, tell us the story and tell us who you are moving forward with regards to this.
Yeah, I haven't really decided what to do because Symbio has given me the whole source code. I can do whatever I like with it, and Anna has their version. I have my own version. And currently at the company, I'm driving this development department, and we haven't switched over to the NI's version. Of course, we haven't switched over to 2013, so that might be one of the reasons. But of course, we still need to have maybe tweaks and things that doesn't work in the current version. We need to tweak, and we might have our own internal version. Yeah, trying new things and all that. But depends on how easy it is to be able to do these changes and have our own branch of the GOOP Development Suite, the NI version. And if we can still play with that one, it might be a good jump to that one. Regarding the acquisition, I wasn't really part of it. I was just doing development, and I always wanted it to be free. I always said to the management, hey, you should make it free. Yeah, you don't make so much money of it anyway, so just make it free and make it more people can join in. But actually, when the acquisition was talked, I wasn't really involved in that one. Stephen.
That was more on my side. I had the primary relationship with Symbio, which is odd for a low-level developer. I'm not anywhere in NI's management chain. I'm a software engineer, but I happen to have a very strong technical relationship, not just with Mikael, but also with Jan, who was his manager for a long time. And that I kind of used that to talk to a few more people within Symbio, and kind of get them to the point where they would tell me point blank, yes, we are interested in selling this. And they knew that their sales were small, and that NI was interested. So then it was a matter of getting my side interested in actually purchasing it, and that involved doing demos of the software and talking up how all of the features that we were never going to have time to build that Mikael has already built, and we just need to get them and put them in the hands of our users. And I completely and utterly failed at that. And then I had this man called Eli Carey who can sell bread to pigeons, and he's amazing. And he did his song and dance, and management went, yes, it sounds like a great idea. And then there was a exchange of lawyers and checks, and traveling back and forth. And then there was a very exciting period at the Lava Barbecue at NI Week 2013, in which Mikael and I were trying desperately, while we were both in one place, to get software onto a laptop that could actually replicate the build process. So anybody who wondered why we kept running back inside the building, it was to check the build transfer. And then it took another week before we figured out all of the things that Mikael hadn't given me. That I did use that that piece of OpenG code. Here, let me go get the non-code source version of that, and or other things back and forth. And it was a lot of fun. And then we finally had it transferred, and then it was a matter of National Instruments deciding how they were going to package it up. And the original plan was to sell it for, what's the price of every LabVIEW toolkit? I believe it's most of them are $1,500, and someone was like, we'll sell it for that, and I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, it's half the price of what Symbio was selling it for. It'll be great. I'm like, let's try again. Half price is good. And eventually I failed, and I went to Eli and I said, can you sell this? And he said, sure. And then a couple days later, management said, it's a great idea. So we appreciate Eli.
just to wrap up here, we're slowly running out of time. You mentioned that the GDS Toolkit, Actor Framework, and Character Lineator will all be community and community source and going on GitHub. Can you talk a little bit about what you envision the future looking like? Is there more stuff like this going to happen? There's actually a question from Chris Ralph about this topic.
I don't know. It will depend kind of on how this goes. I don't usually promise future functionality, but right at the moment, I would say that we should have stuff on the Git server and available for people to sign the license agreement and everything within 2 weeks from today. And I mean, we've already got the Git server. We got to get the last little bits lined up. But I'm going to put that in the ground that it's sometime before then. And I'll post the announcement on the forums and Lava and various other places when that's finally available. Like I said, I was really hoping for it today. But then as it goes forward, it will sort of depend on how much we see community activity, whether people get excited about this, whether we see useful changes coming in from the community that we say, yes, this is really worth managing this. At some point, it would get larger than what we can staff with volunteer time, I hope. And if it does, that would be a reason to have a paid person, and then that would be a reason to try getting more toolkits to be in this state. But it is an experiment. It is a National Instruments toe in the water, and we'll see how it works out going down the road. And it'll be a learning experience for our users along with us.
And from my point of view, I'd like to encourage the community to do their best to contribute and in a positive way to this initiative, and show National Instruments that it is the right thing to do, and we all love it. So the more we can contribute and be a part of it, the more it sends, like Stephen said, signals to management that, hey, this is cool, this is working.
And so yeah. if we want to look into this today and we want to start talking on a community, where do we go to start talking about that today?
I don't have a particular place for you at the moment. Okay. Obviously, the Actor Framework Forum, you could start talking about that one there. And there's also the GDS forum where you could start talking about that one specifically. As far as a single place for the GitHub projects itself, I don't have a place, but for the two toolkits, they've each got their respective forums on the NI.com community.
Gotcha. So GOOP Development Suite, NI.com community, you can probably search those terms and find that and continue the conversation.
Or if you have the GDS, if you already have the GDS installed from the LabVIEW Tools Network, there's links to the community site all through the documentation, which you could actually read. Mikael's written very good documentation for it.
And one last question for Mikael from Justin Gores. Michael, can we please see the kangaroos outside your window?
I'm in the city. I see the Harbor Bridge and the Sydney Opera House. No kangaroos here at the moment.
There's no kangaroos like just roaming around the streets and all that? I mean, why?
Maybe I can
find some
soft toys. Exactly.
Michael rides a kangaroo to work.
Sure.
Well, thank you all for joining us on VI Shots. Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for being an awesome contributor to a great project that we're all excited to use. Thank you, Jack, as well.
Yeah, you betcha.
Thanks, guys.
And thanks, everyone, for watching. If you want to send feedback, send it to feedback@vishots.com about what you thought about the show, any other future topics you'd like us to cover. Again, go to vishots.com/live, and then you can see all the previously recorded shows. Of course, this is always on YouTube as well. Again, if you want to get notified about future live events, go to vishots.com/subscribe and sign up for the mailing list. Thank you all for watching. Bye.
Take care.
See ya.